All right, hello, Metal Maniacs. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. Absolutely thrilled today. I am chatting with the one and only Carlos Alvarez, of course, of the band Shadowdance. How you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to chat with you. So first off, I just have to congratulate you on the album. And I was going to say new album, but it's new old album. And we'll
Yeah.
get into that. Um, but yeah, so yeah, new album came out last month in February 2024. Ageless, great album. I've
Thank
been digging it since I got my hands on it, and yeah, are just really compelling. Yeah, really emotive, really heavy. Yeah, I've been really digging this album a lot.
Please continue.
Yeah, it's a
Sounds
great. I
right
mean,
off
it's
your fan.
Yeah, I'm really what I really love about it too is that yeah, it kind of has all these elements, all these different, pieces of, I mean, I guess for lack of a better term, you could say, it's progressive metal, but I mean there's power metal elements, there's even a little thrash in there. And just big sweeping guitar solos and huge vocals and just yeah, everything I want in a metal album is on this album. It's
Love
fantastic.
to hear, love to hear it, man.
Yeah, really good stuff. So that being said, I did want to ask you, and that's as I mentioned, when we first started talking about the album, one thing that's fascinating about this is that this is a re-recorded album that's
Mhm.
20 plus years old, 24 years old, I guess,
Yeah.
the original album. So what prompted you to do that now? What was the impetus behind that?
Okay. I'll try to keep this. It's there's a whole prolonged story behind all of it, but I'll try to keep it really short. So basically, what happened was 25 years ago now, um, when I first put the band together, and there was already a handful of songs written from the drummer and I from the first incarnation, if you will, of Shadowdance that we wanted to get out there. And during the course of trying to find people to do it with us, I wrote a handful more songs to go along with them, and that's how we came up with a full album. Now, I had in mind even back then to have George Eliason uh, do the vocals.
Hmm.
And I was friends with him. He played in a couple local bands around here. And the first time I saw them live, it wasn't even my style of music. It was much more like 90s style radio metal, alt metal kind of stuff. But the first time I heard him belt out a note, I was like, "That I got to get that dude on my album." And it just turned out that we wound up becoming friends afterwards. And he was loving the music and he wanted to be a part of it. But then, unfortunately, right when we were about 2 weeks away from starting the recording sessions with the studio time booked out, he had some life things happen that he was really conflicted about. And I just told him, I said, dude, don't worry about it. Just take care of what you need to take care of, and if we cross paths down the road, we will. So we ended up having to get a last minute session vocalist
Hmm.
to do the album. Otherwise, we would have been out the money for the studio. And to his credit, the guy's name was Russ, Russ Friend. Um, he didn't even know who we were, and he came out here from Ohio, and within 2 weeks, and he did the whole album in 2 weekend sessions. He did a fantastic job. It's just his voice wasn't right for the music because the music had been written with George's voice in mind.
Hmm.
And again, not taking anything away from Russ, I just heard a couple of clips. The guy was in like a Iron Maiden tribute band or something like that, and he sounded great doing that stuff. But when he started singing over our stuff, it was just way too over the top operatic and everything else. It was missing a lot of the earthiness that George has, and it just didn't mesh. So unfortunately, that was the version of the album that independently got put out by us back then in 2000. There's a whole bunch more to it, but anyway, 20 years later, it wasn't even 20 years later, it was actually like 15 years later, after the second album come out, I got it into my head that now I've got my own, my own personal studio. I have the ability to rectify a lot of problems that happened with that album. Not everything, but I was like, yeah, we could probably, maybe I could actually make this album be the version it actually wanted to be originally. And during that time period, I was still on good terms with George, and he just he just knocked it out of the park vocally, and he was like, he couldn't have been happier than to have actually finally been able to do that album.
Nice.
So yeah, that's the short version of it. And then the reason why that took a while even from then was because I wound up joining another band, being asked to join another band back in like 2017. So, and plus I work for so many different bands. I've, produced and mixed and done session work for a whole lot of bands and albums over the years. So, and that stuff pays.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't. So I have to prioritize, And a long time ago, I made it a thing to try to make sure that anything that I try to do musically is paid for by doing music stuff, rather than dipping into my own bank account. So, and so yeah, so far I've been pretty successful with that, which is awesome. But anyway, so then I started getting that stuff together here and there where I could. But I never had the chance to actually just go into it like head first. And then COVID hit and everything, shut down, and bands weren't playing. And the band I was in at the time, we weren't doing dick. So I said, now's as good as, is it okay if I curse?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah. So far, I think I've been relatively good, but I tend to really go off sometimes. I can't help. Just part of my acting. But anyway, so yeah, with nothing else to do but a lot of downtime, I said, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So that's why I started redoing all of the guitars, redid all the bass, because the bass was originally done between myself, the bass player, and the drummer, believe it or not, who is probably one of the most gifted natural musicians I've ever met in my life. But the problem being that the engineer that we had recorded originally with was more of a, rock guy and stuff. And so everything was all based on feel and this song instead of that song. And there wasn't consistency. And I wanted to fix that, along with a bunch of other things, because as you get older, you get a little bit smarter, hopefully. And I realized that a lot of what was happening in the original version of the album was me trying to shove 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag. Right. So, with a little bit of hindsight, I realized I don't really need to have that extra layer of guitar melodies while the vocals are happening, and I don't need to have this song in there, which objectively after years I'm like, it's not a very good song. The album would be stronger not having it on there. So I actually wound up eliminating 2 tracks and brought to the forefront a hidden track to replace 2 with. And I think overall it just made for a much more impactful and concise overall album. And yeah, there you go. That's it. Ramble off.
No. Yeah. It's very cohesive. It's it's a great. Yeah, I love the sequencing too of the tracks. It really works well together. I think it flows. There's a nice flow to the album.
It's intentional. It's not. I mean, it is a concept album of sorts. Sometimes the concept makes way more for thematic elements as opposed to sticking strictly to the concept. But the beginning to end of the album as a whole does kind of follow a particular intentional flow and concept to the underlying story of the album.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And you mentioned, you re-recorded you basically kind of scrapped a lot of, all the guitars, re-recorded and bass, so you just kept some, if not all of the drums and the keyboards, or did you even redo some of that as well?
All the drum tracks are the original drum tracks. I wouldn't scrap any of that stuff. As I said, Jason is probably one of the most gifted musicians I've ever worked with, and he was, God, I think was he 20, 21 at the time when he did that album. I had already been playing with him in another band, like a precursor to Shadowdance, for several years before that. I met him when he was 15, and he was already almost playing at that level.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's just, and his whole family's musically gifted. So it wasn't really shocking once I started meeting other people in his family and going, okay, I see where you actually get this from. So yeah, it was very important to me because I felt that the original drum tracks are a huge part of the overall integrity of the songs. And to do something like this, I could have very easily just got another drummer to re-record everything to click tracks, which would have made my life way easier. But that would have been disrespectful to Jay's performance, and I think to the integrity of the songs themselves. So I painstakingly fixed a lot of things that were really done weird when we recorded them. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything I could do about the fact that the album was done without click tracks. So when it came time to re-record like the rhythm guitars, trying to track 4 sets of rhythm guitars to a whole lot of ebb and flow, push and pull with no click tracks or anything was quite an interesting challenge for my old ass arms. It was a little bit of a challenge, and I'm pretty happy with how they came out and stuff. But yeah, note to anybody listening: always record to click tracks if you can. It'll make. But yeah, so the original drums and all of the rhythm guitars were scrapped, so they're re-recorded from the ground up. I believe, if I trying to think, yeah, actually, every guitar that I had originally recorded was completely redone, including my solos from the time. And I tried to also stick as close to the original solos that I did. Again, all part of the integrity of the song. But I did fix a couple of things that, again, hopefully as you get older, you get better at an instrument. And so I corrected some bad note choices and threw a little extra flair here and there where I was able to do things a little bit better. And I think for the most part, the keyboard solos that a guy named Tim McKinstry had done back in the day, I kept those. The piano section in the song Forever, and the keyboard solo in Line in the Sand, and also Leave the Pain. That's a guy named Tim McKinstry. So I kept those. But everything else is all completely re-recorded.
Wow, nice. That's quite the chore, but definitely well worth it, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, for what came out. I guess so. Here's probably a stupid question. So with redoing this album, is the band in existence, or was this just your project to recreate the?
So the band, as it is in the photo and on that particular album, is not in existence.
Okay.
Because Jason, for instance, has since moved on to different musical pastures. He started hanging with a really bad element and became a monstrously talented jazz musician. So he's no longer metal oriented. I just spoke with George earlier today. George is semi-retired from singing. But if I was to put together a new batch of songs, there's a probably not, but never say never kind of thing as far as he goes. Even if it wasn't for lead vocals, he might jump in for a part of a song, a new song, or some backing vocals or something like that. Because he genuinely loves the music that we created together. And to be honest, even going as far back as the original version of this album, it was barely a functioning lineup. I can't even tell you how many different musicians went in and out, and that's nothing new with most bands anyway.
Right.
So Shadowdance has always, I mean, primarily just been me.
Okay.
I'm the primary songwriter. I've been the producer. I'm the one that has the gave it direction, and cobble people together to try to make things happen. I mean, we were a legit 100% functioning band at one point, but even when that happened, it wasn't with the people that were on Ageless. So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've already started working on a whole brand new batch of songs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and the really great thing is the guy that is primarily responsible for um, almost all the lyrics on Ageless and was integral in working with me in helping create all of those awesome vocal melodies and ideas. My dear friend Mark, he's actually working on the new material with me, so I'm actually really excited about it.
Oh, nice.
To have him back on board in that capacity lyrically and helping me starting to develop melody lines and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Very cool.
it's
the intention that this would be a follow-up Shadowdance album, or
yeah. So there's Ageless just coming out now, but originally came out independently in 2000. The version now is on Dive Bomb Records, but we did put out a second album with George singing. That was in 2014. Second album was called Future Negative Fantasy, and that came out on a German label called Rocket Up Records. And it got like a lot of really good reviews, but I'm really unhappy with the sound of that album as well. There were a lot of things beyond my control, and that's way too long a story to get into. So my intention is, as I start to craft all brand new, 100% brand new Shadowdance material, working with Mark. I already have a absolute dynamite powerhouse singer that's interested to do the vocal. And I've got no shortage of incredibly talented friends and people that I've collaborated with in multiple projects over the years. So to get somebody to do the drums and the bass would be absolutely no issue. So I'm looking forward to that. And while that starts to develop, hopefully going to be able to give the second album the same treatment that I gave Ageless and fix a lot of the problems it had and hopefully re-release it.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Would you go as far as re-recording everything, or
Yeah, well, I mean, so the bass on that album is great. That was done by a guy who was, he was actually in the band at the time, Jason Fox. He did a phenomenal job on the bass, so that would absolutely stay. I wouldn't touch his bass tracks. The drums were done, just an indication of some of the issues, but the drums were actually done by two different drummers with a time period of like 2 or 3 years in between the two sessions.
oh wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff dynamically way different in those performances than sound, even just the sound. So I would like to fix that up somehow. I already have a few ideas on how to do that. But the rhythm guitars, again, I would definitely fix those. And there were a lot of issues in the vocal recordings that at the time I didn't have my studio. So I was kind of at the whim of other engineers across a long period of time trying to make it happen. And yeah, let's just say there were some glaring mistakes made, and I now have the tools to fix some of that. I wouldn't be able to fix all of it, but I could fix some of it. I could make that album sound a lot better than it does. It still won't be perfect, but it will be way better sounding. So that's my goal while I start to craft all new material.
Cool. Do you have and maybe this is too early, but do you have like a kind of a target date that you want to, have this released by, or?
Not really. But I guess if I was to really just kind of throw it out there, I'd say with a little bit of luck, if we sell out the rest of this Ageless album, then hopefully Dive Bomb would be interested in putting out a redux version of the second album.
Hmm.
which would then I would hope could be possibly earlier part or middle of next year if they were game for that. And if that's the case, then I look at it as buying me a good solid year and a few months to get a brand new album together that I could actually have recorded and ready to go for whenever afterwards.
Nice, nice. Would you I mean, it sounds like you're pretty busy already, but with all of this and also with your day job and your you know, and producing other bands,
Yep.
um would you consider or have you considered doing, you know, getting a, you know, a ensemble group together and doing some live shows?
If Yeah, I got asked that recently, and again, I have no shortage of talented friends and people I've collaborated with over the years. If something was worthwhile, uh, absolutely. You know, I mean, I can still play all the stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and the people I have in mind, if I was like, I really need a band in like the next 2 weeks to do something in a month from now, I already know the people that I would ask, and I'd feel pretty confident that that could happen relatively easy with a few rehearsals. These are the kind of people that don't really need to rehearse very often. They'll just practice it on their own. You get together for one or two rehearsals, and it would probably sound like we'd been in a rehearsal room together for 6 months or something. So yeah, I would absolutely be open to it, but it'd have to be worthwhile. I'm not going to do something like that just to go hit like, open up for whatever, some mid-level band or whatever, the local watering hole or something. I got way too much more constructive stuff to do musically than waste my Saturday night doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So let's switch gears a little bit. Like take let's take a ride in the Wayback Machine. Tell me about tell me about your start in music. Did you come from a musical family? Like kind of what was the beginnings for you as far as music and metal?
Well, so I mean, there's nobody in my family that's musically oriented really, or I'm trying to think if there's even anybody that played an instrument or something. I think my one uncle used to play like a jazz horn or something, but I don't know. Anyway, no, so I mean, I got started young. Uh, I've always had an interest in especially in rock and metal. I mean, I was born in '74, and I could show anybody pictures of me by the time I was 5 years old. I was going out as a different member of Kiss for Halloween every year. I
Nice.
had my Kiss record player, and I had the original action figures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the ones that are worth like so much now. I had all of them, but like yeah. So that I had and my parents were kind of hippie-ish or something, so there was always Black Sabbath album with a lot of stems and seeds in the middle of it, and shit like that, Zeppelin, and Queen was a big one for me even when I was a kid, because that was when they were cool the first time around.
Yeah.
So music's always been kind of there, and something that I've always enjoyed. Um, and then my uncle, uh, he kind of started making me listen to other things to appreciate it. He wasn't entirely musically inclined, but I think he just loved music. And maybe he recognized that in me when I was a kid. I don't know, but he started making me listen to classical music and even like other rock stuff that I didn't like too much. I'm not a Hendrix guy,
Okay.
but he forced me to listen to Hendrix to at least get me to appreciate what was going on. Which I eventually did appreciate. I still don't like Hendrix very much, but I can appreciate it now. But yeah, like especially the classical music, he was always making me listen to stuff. He would even like quiz me on it. Um,
Wow.
so that's kind of like where I started with, as far as like rock, metal, and most really good classical music is just the heavy metal of that time period.
Right.
And then when I got, when I was a teenager, I remember when I was 13, and Keeper to Seven Keys had just come out, the first one. And I remember that was the first time I heard Michael Kiske, which was, as a vocalist, it was very influential. I'm not even a vocalist, but it still inspired me even more into music. But when I heard the song Twilight of the Gods, which Kai Hansen wrote, I was just like blown away. And I was like, wow, it really made me start considering the idea of maybe I want to play guitar. Maybe I should try that out, you know? And then Keeper to Seven Keys Part 2 come out. And I bought that. And then I heard the song, like the whole album is, you know, there's a reason why it's considered one of the best ever. But the song March of Time come on, and Kai Hansen wrote it. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay. And I think I had my first guitar within a month of that coming out. And so I would say, like, without a doubt, Kai Hansen is probably the most responsible for me picking up a guitar, you know, indirectly, even though I did actually get to meet him years ago, like in a totally social setting. And what a super nice guy.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah, it was really cool. I was struggling so hard to not like fanboy.
Oh, I would.
Yeah, like playing it cool, you know. I was like at a party, and it was like his girlfriend at the time. It was a party at her place in Hamburg, Germany, and I was there with my buddy Jan, and it was actually my first date with my the girl I eventually married. But we were hanging out at this party, and I was hanging out with him, and he's just like the nicest, chillest guy. And I was just like trying so hard to not say like, "Can I get you another beer, Mr. Hansen?" You know? So, you know, I eventually told him, you know, because we were talking about music, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you know, I play in a band too." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah, I worship you.
Yeah. He goes, "Oh, you've heard?" I go, "Yeah, Halloween." He goes, "Oh, do you have any albums?" I got all of them. You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and then I told him, I was like, "You're actually the reason why I play guitar." And he was like, he gave me like a quick hug, and then he went and got me a beer. So
Oh,
how cool.
wow.
Yeah.
What a great story. That is fantastic. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, he was a great dude. He was a great dude. So
That's really cool. Well, especially, yeah, because you always hear, you know, the old adage, like, don't meet your idols. But it's nice when you hear stories like that. Because, yeah, for the most part, everybody I've met, you know, as far as my heroes, metal heroes, they've all been really cool,
yeah,
apart
I've
from
been
maybe
lucky.
a couple.
Yeah. A couple, I mean, some of my biggest influences, I've eventually wound up meeting them and hanging out with them, and all of them have, not all of them, there was one that's a dick, but for the most part, the important ones have all shown themselves to just be incredibly gracious, humble, down to earth, awesome people. So
Yeah, it's always surprising too when you meet some of them, and you know, because you know, especially if you know it's somebody you've worshipped since you were a kid, or you know, high school kid or whatever, and they end up being not only humble but also somewhat shy, you know, and quiet,
yeah,
and somewhat intimidated. You know, they get up on stage and they're this explosive personality, but then off the stage they're kind of quiet and shy, and that surprised me a little bit with some of the people I met too. Or like, wow, this guy's like an introvert, you know, he's really quiet, you know.
I can absolutely relate to that because, like I said, I'm pretty. I can be quite socially awkward at times, and you know, you have to be able to try to reconcile that when you decide you're going to play in a band because you know it's not an easy thing. I'm more than happy to just chill out and you know hang out in my studio or just chill out with the wife and watch a movie. Like I'm not a social butterfly by any means, and you know when I would play shows, if somebody come up to me and like starts complimenting me, I feel like so uncomfortable. But I also recognize when I'm on that end, the other end of it, I recognize how important that is to try to make that connection to somebody that you've managed to impress
Mm,
for
yeah.
whatever reason. So I always I never shy away from talking to somebody or anything like that, even if deep down inside I'm kind of like, yeah, a
I just
little
want to
nervous.
go back to the dressing room.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. So with the guitar, so self-taught, did you take lessons? Did you kind of just discover it on, just by listening to records or?
There was a guy when I was in high school, because like I said, I was about 14 and a half, 15 when I actually got my first guitar. And the first couple months or whatever was me just trying to, pick out notes that I would hear from, uh, songs that seemed easy, I guess. I think like one of the first things I ever played on guitar that actually sounded like it might have been correct was like Twist of Cain from Danzig.
Mm.
And then, yeah, I think like, For Whom the Bell Tolls from Metallica and stuff. Anything else beyond that was just like literally just beyond my ability, because like, you got to train yourself to hear things properly.
Yeah.
And so there was a guy in my high school. He was a couple years older than me. It was this Filipino guy named Lou, and he played in a really big local band from around the way. And he went to, I believe he went to, shit, now I can't remember. It was a really good music school though. Berkeley? Might have been Berkeley.
Oh, nice.
He eventually wound up going there, but he was offering lessons at the local guitar shop that was right down the street from me. And it was funny because, like I said, I knew him. He was like a senior when I first got into high school, so he was a few years ahead of me and stuff. But I think we wound up having the same guidance counselor, and she used to call me Little Louie because we actually looked a lot alike. And then I guess through helping him with like his college applications or something, she said, "There's this guy that wants to learn how to play guitar. You should talk to him." And so I met up with him at the guitar store, and that's where he gave lessons. So I wound up taking lessons from him for like maybe about 6 months or something like that. And it was good because it was just to learn the absolute basics, like how to tune a guitar, what's a power chord, and why does it work, and then after I had those basics down, he was like, "Do you want to actually learn what your guitar is, or do you want to learn how to play?"
Hmm.
And I said, "I want to learn how to play." So he said, "Okay, well, pick a couple of songs that you would like to try to learn how to play, and we'll figure them out together, and I'll get you playing them within, a couple of weeks or something." So I would do that every couple of weeks. When I had a lesson, I would bring a couple of different songs, and it wasn't even always like the whole song. Sometimes it was just parts of a song, but he would figure it out by ear, and then he would show me. I think a lot of times in a real like basic version or something, but to my ears, I didn't hear the difference. He would show me how to play it, and he would get me playing it. And then after a little while, when I started picking up on it, and he's like, "Okay, you're getting better." He's like, "Now I'm going to show you some really cool tricks where this is how you would actually play it." And then he would show me on the neck and stuff. He said, "But this is how I want you playing it if there's girls watching." So then he would show me a more like kind of impressive looking way to play it. And he said, "But you play it like that when girls are watching." But he's like, "If you're recording, then you play it the way I showed you first."
That is awesome. I love that.
Lou was awesome, man. Lou's a great dude.
That's really funny. I love that. That's, yeah. If girls are watching, here's what you do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do the
Yep.
Adrian Vanderberg and lick the guitar.
Yeah. Whatever it takes, Not
Yeah.
all of amazing specimens of masculinity. I'm five at my height, my full height. I was 5'10" if I didn't slouch, and 135 pounds soaking wet. I wasn't exactly going to get any cheerleaders without knowing how to play guitar good. You know what I mean?
Right. That's that's great. Now, and yeah, I mean, you're also, I mean, you're multi-instrumental. You play the bass and keyboards as well now, correct?
Keyboards, I very basic. I'm not about to do any solos for anybody, but I can do some piano stuff, very basic piano stuff, but mostly just kind of I know how to layer I I think I know how to layer keyboard sounds and kind of integrate them into songs and stuff. So my drummer Jason at the time, like I said, he's a incredibly gifted musician, and he wound up going to like the New School in New York, and studying with all sorts of like high level musicians. He even took classes from Alex Skolnick from Testament, who was teaching jazz at the time. And and he gave me the, I think, what is one of the best backhanded compliments I've ever gotten in my life. One time we were working on a new song, and I was like, well, I think like if I do this, and then if you do this, and then we could actually do this, and I'm pretty sure that would work out pretty good. And he understood what I was actually like, the implications of what I was saying musically, even if I didn't. But he's just like staring at me, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is going to work. We're gonna try it out. And he just looked at me and he goes, if you actually knew what you were doing, you'd be dangerous. And I was like, thanks, bro. Wait a minute.
Hey, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So when it comes to things like keyboards and how to the interplay with guitars and bass, whatever, I never view bass as a guitar. Bass is its own instrument. So I approach bass usually from an entirely different perspective than if I was writing something on guitar. I think the only reason why I even play guitar anymore is because I've got my bass. So, when I pick a guitar, I can go on the bass and just kind of groove out a little bit. And, bass is sexy. So it kind of gets you back into the headspace to want to, play an unsexy instrument like the guitar. So, yeah, I try. But the only, what I suck at? Drums. I cannot play to save my life. I can sing too. Not great. I'm really good for backing vocals and layering harmonies and stuff. Like I can do choir vocals really good. I think anyway. So I guess that sounds a little fucking pretentious, but I've never had a complaint. How about that? So if I've been asked to like layer vocals for something, I've never had anybody come back and say, "Could you get somebody else?" So I can do that stuff pretty good, but I cannot play drums to save my life. Like it's like every one of my limbs is running in a different direction. Terrible.
It's a tricky. Yeah, it seems like you either can do it or you can't.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure you can learn it, but I mean, I've dabbled a little bit. My brother-in-law is a musician, and he's really good he's a really good guitar player, and he's a really good bass player, and he's a really good drummer. I've dabbled a little bit with the drums, but it's really, like you said, like trying to figure out what your arms and your legs are doing, and not just doing the exact same thing, at the same time. It's really
you're on the floor. That was me all the time. Like,
yeah.
I think I'd probably even make that face too.
Yeah, it's like a child banging on pots and pans. That's what I feel like when I try it. When I sit down at the kid, I'm like, this is really uncomfortable.
Movie dodgeball is like a monkey fucking a doorknob or something. That's me. Terrible as right.
So you learned the guitar, back, so tell me about like kind of, that initial, those first bands, that first, I know a few bands you've been in, Power Theory and Single Bullet Theory as well, right?
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah. So
that's I like Single Bullet Theory, great band. I wasn't really in that band. A little bit of contention with back in the day. That's all squashed now. Everybody's good, but I kind of got asked to join that band right around the time when they knew that they were going to be doing or possibly doing a tour, decent sized tour, opening up for Amorphous. And Amorphous is one of my favorite bands. So ever since their first album come out, so I was pretty hyped about it. Rehearsed for a couple months with them, did the tour, most of the tour, and then quit right after the tour. It wasn't working out. It just wasn't working out. So, but good band, great band. If you're into really aggressive, you know, kind of thrashy with hints of like death metal and stuff. Um, that's the kind of thing that's, you know, right up that alley. And just didn't work out with me. I just always kind of felt uh, more like a hired guy to do the tour kind of thing. Because when I tried to introduce a few ideas musically, um, it was either just outright squashed or it was like, you know, oh, you have an idea? I have a better one. So, you know, and
Mm.
it just, I'm like, that's not my idea though. So yeah, I was like, you know what? I've never really been great in bands because a lot of time it's really difficult to get 4 or 5 people together that are actually on the same page, like, you know, just mentally, emotionally, you know, whatever. And Power Theory was a great band. That was a fun time. The hilarious thing being that for about 2 years before I got asked to join that band, uh, even though I was never really asked officially, I just never took my equipment out of the rehearsal room. But I did it as a favor for the guitarist Bob because they they lost their guitarist and they had 2 gigs booked like about a month later. And he's like, listen, I know your favorite expression is that's why I don't play in a band. Because that was like my big thing for years. I'm like, I don't play in a band, you know. And he's like, I know you say that, and I'm not asking you to join. And I can't even help it. I always like slip into his fucking voice. But he goes, but I'm stuck. Could you help me out? Of course. It's my friend. I love him. So I learned their set, uh, did like a rehearsal with them, did the first show, great, did the second show. After the first show, the rest of the guys were already like, you're joining the band, right? You're joining the band, right? You're joining the band. I'm like, no, I'm not saying I'm going to join the band. I'm just helping you guys out. And after the second one, you know, so you're going to join the band, right? You're going to, like, no, I don't know. Let's just keep rehearsing. And then the next thing you know, like 5 years went by. So
Wow.
yeah. So, you know, it was that. But that was from about 2017 up until right at the beginning of this year. And then before that, I was in a tribute band from around here. It was one of the I think one of the best tribute bands, and not because I was in it, but just it was just awesome to be in that band. That was probably the most fun I ever had playing in a band uh, called Disposable Heroes.
No.
That was originally it started as a tribute to vintage Metallica. That was our selling point. We would only do stuff from And Justice for All and back.
Okay.
Nothing from the Black Album, nothing beyond that stuff. But then over time, we started throwing in everything. We started playing lots of Slayer songs and Megadeth, uh, Anthrax, Iron Maiden, Sepultura, Pantera, Motorhead. Like
Wow.
it eventually just became kind of like more like a tribute to like golden age of metal, you know, from like 1982 to 1992 sort of time period.
Nice.
And we would play pretty much. I mean, we played every month, sometimes I think twice a month, if I remember correctly. And we would do 3 45-minute sets.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was. I actually managed to get skinny again after play speed metal for and thrash metal for 3 45-minute sets a show,
Yeah,
and
that's a lot of
yeah,
work.
watch the pounds melt off.
Yeah.
That was a good time. That was from like 2006 to about 2012. Um, yeah, the Single Bullet Theory was that was just basically around 2005, 2006, I think. And right before that was all like the Shadowdance stuff. Like we did a
Okay.
tour with them as well. That was when it was a highly functioning band. So yeah, that's. I mean, there's other high school and friend kind of bands and stuff along the way, but nothing worth really mentioning at this point. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh, cool. Wow, that's fascinating. That's cool. Yeah, that tribute band sounds great. That sounds really cool.
Mm,
Um, well, Carlos, this has been awesome chatting with you. For those of you watching, go get Ageless right now from Shadowdance. It is a phenomenal album. Yeah, yes, available on Dive Bomb Records. And yeah, I'm sure you can get it. I'll have a I'm stumbling over my words here. I'll have links in the description below, so you can check out Shadow Dance.
awesome.
Yeah, really cool stuff. I've been really digging this album a lot. Yeah, every
Appreciate
track just rocks. I think my favorite might be Climb, but then I'll listen to another track. I'm like, no, this is my favorite track now. But I really love Climb.
it. It's a pretty mean tune, man.
Yeah, I love the aggression on that, and just yeah, the vocals and the guitars on that song are just yeah, otherworldly. Yeah, really cool stuff. Yeah, so definitely check that out. And then of course, the follow-up album will be re-released in the coming year as well. So
If
that
this
would be
was
cool.
well enough, then maybe Dive Bomb will want to put out the second album. So
Nice, nice.
yeah, see what happens.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely for those of you watching, check out Shadow Dance if you're not familiar. Really cool band, really cool music. Yeah, I've been really enjoying it a lot. So yeah, definitely I'd say I'd say this album is going to be a top 10 for me for 2024 for sure. Yeah,
Wow.
really cool
Thank
stuff.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks again, Carlos. It's really fun chatting with you.
My pleasure, Victor. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.